Okay, if I could call
Volume up is top.
Yeah.
if I could call the meeting to order, folks. We had present. We have Muffy, Heather, Catherine, George, Ralph. Diane is here on speakerphone. Jimmy sent me a email earlier today. He's flying in from Tennessee or whatever, Kentucky, and he expected he was going to be at the meeting. He said it'll be 4 or shortly thereafter. I do not know about Mike Stevens, and obviously I'm here. First thing we could do, we have the minutes of the meeting that Heather was so nice to do for us. Has everybody had a chance to read those from December 19th? Any errors, omissions, corrections, additions needed?
I make a motion, they'll be accepted.
They look good to me.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Oh,
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Nay? No nays? The minutes as presented are accepted. And Heather, I thank you very much again, and you'll record the vote. And you'll record the vote?
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been doing that.
No, I'm just kind of
the vote
kidding.
was
It was
Yeah.
unanimous, yeah.
Yeah, unanimous. Okay, several things on the agenda, but the first thing I would like to do, at the last meeting, we had rather extensive presentations and discussions from the Chamber of Commerce, Caleb, Pathways, and LIDC. And I would like to take votes on the 4 of those as we start the meeting before we get on to other things. So the first petition warrant article is from the Chamber of Commerce, which is article number 24 and 25. Actually, there's 2 articles, that's right. One for $11,150 and one for $2,655. Nothing has changed there, Andrew. But you know.
Do you need a motion for that?
Well, first, I guess the question, well, yes, if I would entertain a motion to take a vote on Articles 24 and 25 as listed on our warrant article sheet.
Moved.
Well, we're going to make a motion to this.
I just made a motion,
Okay.
the same thing.
Okay, and seconded? This
I'll
is-
second.
Okay, seconded by Ralph. Okay.
Can I vote?
Huh?
Can I vote?
On the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah.
Unless you feel you
No, I'm on
can't.
chamber board.
Chamber Board. Okay, well,
Do I? Can I?
I would think that anyone that belongs to a board, and as well as with the LIDC, if you're a member, I think you need to recuse yourself.
Okay,
okay.
that's what I thought.
Okay. We had rather extensive, that was actually the second presentation we had from the Chamber of Commerce, so is there any new discussion or new information on the Chamber?
Steve, can
Gavin?
I just ask,
Yes,
the first one for 11,150 was for downtown beautification?
yes.
And the second one for 2,655 is what?
Event.
Events.
Events like the pumpkin
Okay.
deal and any of those type of, and we can do these separately if people would like to do them separately.
I think we need to.
No, I just didn't remember what that second was.
Okay, but no, but if
I
any
had it
for,
lumped all together.
Shouldn't we do them all separately, one article at a time?
yeah, and probably Ralph, we should, okay.
Yeah, I
Okay,
guess
so
they're
why
different
don't
numbers.
we do 24 first, which is the Chamber of Commerce beautification appropriation, which is for everything that's done on Main Street, flowers, flags, Pollyanna, I'm
Wreaths,
guessing,
all that.
Lights.
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 Okay, okay. Any discussion on that? Okay, so all those in favor of supporting Article 24, the Chamber of Commerce for $11,150 for Main Street beautification, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. I don't. Yeah.
You
And Jimmy,
can, if you break a tie.
yes, to bring
Okay,
it
so 1,
back. Jimmy,
you said yes?
Yes.
2, she said yes, 3.
and
said
Jimmy,
yes.
and
4.
Catherine said yes. Jimmy, sorry, just we were voting on Article 24, Chamber of Commerce, Main Street beautification.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So 5-1.
I have 6-1 with 1 abstention.
Where?
Yeah. 6.
Yeah.
6 in favor, so 6 in favor, 6-1. Okay, Diane, thank you very much. I appreciate your taking time from hopefully what's warmer weather than what we're experiencing here.
Not too much.
Not too much.
No, it's not that much warmer.
Not yet, anyway.
No, yeah, okay, but it will be. Okay,
Yeah.
so then Article 25, Chamber of Commerce commercial event appropriation, which has to do with specific money for
Events.
events. Okay, any further discussion on Article 25? And these numbers may change too, so we're saying it's Article 25, but also listing what it is, because the numbers may change.
That's correct.
When you
Oh,
get
the
to.
article number, yes,
When-
not the dollar amount of the
No,
request.
that's
Okay,
right,
thank
that's
you.
right, sorry, the number may change once it gets to the final ballot. All those in favor of supporting Article 25 for the Chamber of Commerce for $2,655, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all
Aye.
opposed? So if I'm right on that, that is,
7-0 with
Aye.
one abstention.
okay, very good. Okay, the next,
Can I ask you
Yes.
a point?
yes,
This is an advisory committee, so the rule here may not apply, but when we have a member that's called in and is participating on a call-in, you should verify either through Rudy or someone in the back that they can hear her and that she can hear all of us.
okay.
And you may want to do that before you go any further,
Okay.
just to cover that.
Diane, did you hear Milt's comment?
I did, and I can hear everyone.
Okay,
Thank you.
And is there anybody here who cannot hear Diane
Can you
when she
hear her,
speaks?
Rudy?
I,
Okay, you can.
Good, okay.
Can you
thank
hear? her? Good.
that's the only thing do that.
No, thank you very much. Good point of order.
Can you hear her, Milt?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Either with my hearing aids.
Don't laugh at people with hearing aids.
Okay, the,
Or should ask.
yes, Rudy.
Just 1 second. If anybody of this committee belongs to another committee, okay,
Yeah,
if they vote in favor of the other committee, you should know about it.
Yes.
because-
And that's what we,
We did that.
and that's
what
what,
we
That's
did.
what we did.
that's
I'm
why
on the board
he
of the chamber and I didn't
couldn't
vote.
vote.
You-
Yeah, I
you're the only
didn't
one?
vote, yeah,
You're the only one?
yeah.
Thank you.
okay. I think, Rudy, in that case, being on the board of the chamber, you'd have to differentiate from being a member of the chamber, because if you didn't allow anybody who was a member of the chamber, you probably wouldn't have several people. So I mean, there's a difference from being on the board and paying your annual dues, I would hope.
Oh,
You
no,
know,
I'm
you know,
talking about you belonging to both the committee.
and then, yeah, that's right, more directly
Yeah,
involved.
more
Because,
Oh, okay.
you know, you think about that, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
probably most people in town, directly or indirectly, are members of the chamber. Okay, the next article was Caleb, which is article number
37.
37. Caleb Caregivers. And Ralph, I think you had questions on this one in terms of, you know, multiple agencies servicing.
Probably the same thing that you're doing.
Right. Other than, and I guess the only response I'd have to that would be is that probably they need multiple agencies to,
A ton of them.
And I did talk with a friend who's involved with another agency, totally different. And the one thing they said about Caleb is they have so many volunteers that will pitch in that at no cost to the community over and above, that they really do help out people that kind of a borderline needs, and especially where we live in a place where there's not transportation for things and all that. They really think that it's a really good value for the small amount of money a community is doing. It's one more resource
Okay.
with
And
not a ton of money.
and I think they mentioned one of the main things that they do, or one of the highlight items, is as far as providing rides.
Yeah.
At no charge.
At no
But
charge.
oftentimes the person getting the ride might give the driver a contribution, some for gasoline.
But almost no one takes the money that they could. So it really is a very good service for either infirm or elderly or whatever for not much money at all. I just wanted to check it because I just wasn't sure what it was, and this gal seemed to know all about it. Had no vested interest in it whatsoever. So a really good bang for a very inexpensive buck.
Well, it's unbelievable the people that take advantage of these situations.
What?
Work in the hospital, you see how many people do take advantage of these situations.
Yeah.
It's
And need to take advantage of it. Especially
In a
days
good
like
way.
this when
Oh, yeah.
cars don't start, right?
That's right.
No, in a good way, not,
Yeah, I knew, sorry, George, yes.
I'm
because-
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of supporting Article 37, Caleb caregivers in the amount of $2,000, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay. Nay.
So that's 5. And Diane, did you vote?
Yes, I did.
It's a
I'm
pot?
for it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's
that's 1, 2,
6 to
3,
1?
4, 8, 6,
6 to 1.
6 to 1.
1, 2, 3,
Without one extension.
Yep.
6.
Yeah, 6 to 1, no extension.
You'd be in trouble if you had to go to 9, wouldn't you?
I'm not abstaining, I only voted because there were 5. That's-
Okay.
Can we go back, just,
Sorry.
I'm looking at my notes and
Yes,
I have that the Chamber of Commerce vote on Article number 24 was 6 to 1 with 1 abstention.
No, it was 7-0 on 25.
24.
Oh, 24 was 6 to 1.
Is it 5 to 1?
6 to 1.
6-1.
Well, they're all equaling 7, even the ones within a,
It's
without.
5 to 1 and 1 abstention.
Okay, it is 5 to 1.
Because you abstained from the chamber.
Right.
5 to 1.
Okay.
And then Article 25
The same.
would be
Six
6 to 0 with
6
1
to 0,
abstention,
yeah.
okay.
Well, wait a minute, that makes 8 then.
1, 2.
7-0 with 1.
6 to 0, she said with 1
Six.
abstention.
6-0. Okay.
But
Every-
the chairman doesn't vote
Yeah.
unless there's a tie.
yeah.
Right.
Everybody is here one way or the other except for Mike Stevens,
Yeah.
out of the 9.
So the Caleb one was 7 to 1.
Yes.
No.
Okay?
No.
6 to 1.
6 to 1.
You sure you want me taking
There's
these?
7 of us.
The 7, yeah, okay,
There you
right now
go.
7 people voting,
Got it.
including.
Just wanted to make sure I had it right.
I'll bring her picture next time. Put it up front.
Bring an abacus. Just line up the beads.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, sorry.
okay, the next one was Frank Malachi's presentation on pathways. That is Article,
Does he have an actual petition in yet? He didn't have as of that day.
Yeah.
Received as of 12/26/2017.
Okay.
so is there a number assigned now? We're gonna make that 39 or?
Well, on this new sheet that I have today,
Yes.
it's number 38, but
Okay, well, I just don't wanna get confusion, obviously, Karen, on the numbers. We
that's
do
why we're
realize.
doing the names.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right, so, okay, so what do we wanna give it a number?
I did 38, but then we wrote down pathways.
Which was
pregnancy.
CASA for children, originally.
And now that's
Yeah.
37.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so,
Well,
It'll
okay,
change.
can we, why don't, for today,
You want
why
the
don't
new
we,
sheet?
why don't we call Frank Malachi Pathways for today?
Yes, that's
Why don't we call that
If
39?
she's got
That's
new
fine.
sheets, why didn't she just pass the new sheets out?
Well, yeah, we could do that, but don't we, they have till the 9th to submit, so those numbers could potentially change
They can
again.
still change again, okay.
So I
Oh,
think
oh,
we should
yeah.
just go by
Alright.
name.
Okay, all
I
right,
don't know, I just
You're right,
think,
Heather.
okay.
go
Just,
by the
just so we-
name.
Okay, anyway, so just to summarize on Frank's, I mean, obviously, the broad picture is, guidance to young mothers. He obviously said that they were a pro-life organization, but that they, I believe said, gives all options and basically was to inform people. I mean, the mothers here probably can speak to that better than I can in terms of how to view the services.
well, I think when he said, obviously they were pro-life and that they were helping pregnant gals that were gonna keep children, but also counseling them. I don't think he meant it quite as pro-life as,
Yeah,
you know,
Well, they
this
said-
is an anti-abortion office. I think he used that term very loosely and tried to correct himself. Obviously, they're trying to help women that are going to have children that need help, but also give them some counseling. I just didn't understand the whole deal. What agency is it part of? Is it an autonomous agency with a satellite in Berwyn, or is it part of something else?
It's autonomous.
What?
It's autonomous.
It is, okay.
With a satellite office in Berlin,
Right,
but they're
that's it.
supported by a number of churches in the area.
Of
That's
all
what I got.
denominations.
Of all denominations, correct.
But it's not specifically pro-life, it's not anti-choice.
I don't know, I got confused about that.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous to take a stand on whether
on
to
something
support
like
them,
that, yeah.
because I don't know if it's
I don't
the
think
town's
this-
role to,
Yeah, I don't think this committee is here to decide whether people are pro-choice or pro-life, I mean.
no.
But I think what he was trying to say was, for those folks that were trying desperately to help young
Both.
women, or women that were going to have children. And so that makes, yeah, that's of course it's like, but they also did comment that, he did comment that they were counseled all the way around.
And he did comment that the agency was a pro-life agency, not him. He wouldn't comment on his own issues. He said the agency is a pro-life agency. The other issue with that one is that they do exactly the same functions that TANF does. And TANF is state-run, state-funded, operates right out of here at New Hampshire Employment Security Office, and they do the same exact functions, which is to help pregnant women, to help unwed mothers, to follow them through while they're pregnant, need and after the pregnancy, to help them out, locate jobs, find jobs, give them counseling, do whatever they need to do. It's the same exact function. So we've got two agencies in town doing the same exact functions, and one of them state operated.
Does TAN, I'm not familiar with TAN, do they provide like diapers and clothing and other services beyond
And
employment?
nutrition and
Nutrition,
all
yeah.
that stuff.
I mean,
They do yes, they do through their agency. Yes, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Was this funded last year by
No.
the town?
No. This is the
It's the
first
first
time.
request. I just don't know, I mean, God knows anybody that's having a baby needs all the advice they can get and all the help, especially if they're alone. I'm not trying to be
Yeah, I
funny.
know,
Oh, no.
He gave a presentation at the Rotary earlier this year, and he described some numbers, and I mean, there's definitely demand, you know. I don't know if the demand is a separate demand from TANF, or if it's more in depth, or if the federal.
it may not
government-
require, he
Yeah.
didn't say anything about there being income
Right. I don't-
limitations,
yeah,
so
that might be
it's
the
probably
difference.
open to anyone who's
Yeah.
young,
I know that
unwed.
it's
Yeah,
well
it's
supported
stuck.
by all the
So-
churches in the area. They think highly of it.
What?
Oh, of Pathways. They think very highly of
Who
Pathways.
does?
The church.
All the different churches.
They do.
Yes, they think very highly of it in their services, yeah.
So in some ways,
Well, it's needed service. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's needed, totally
Well,
needed.
unless it's duplication, like Ralph said.
yeah,
that's a-
although if it's duplication, as in the case of Caleb, where, you know, more and more is needed anyway, then, you know, for $1,500, you know, providing, for $1,500, if you could help out two people, it'd be,
For $1,500,
I just
if
said
there's a
with it-
phone that's answered when you're in deep trouble, I think it's a pretty good deal, but I don't know anything about the agency.
I think it's great work, but I feel like state funded and federally funded programs like that are very neutral, are very designed to be in the middle. I don't know enough for me about what their counseling is and what direction they go. So
If you have too many questions, you can either ask more questions of him, or you can delay this vote tonight, or just say we don't have enough information to support it. So there's nothing wrong with not supporting something because you do not know the information. Ask for more information then.
yeah, I mean that's.
But Diane, will that show on a warrant that it was not supported by the budget committee because of the way the rules go?
It is, but we also still have a little bit more time. So if you want to ask him additional questions, we still have time to take action on this.
what's the date that we need to take that vote by, is?
The 11th.
11.
Which would be the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty, well, anyway, I guess, I'll ask the question. Those who would be in favor of supporting Pathways as, at least at this point in time, those who would be in favor of supporting Pathways as presented at the last meeting by Frank Malachi.
Say
I'm-
aye, is that the,
All those who
Are we-
would be in favor of supporting this, please say aye.
Are we
Aye.
voting?
Yes.
Aye.
aye?
We're supporting. If we're voting, I'll,
I'm-
if
go
we're
ahead, vote.
voting, I'll support. If we're holding it off, I'd like to hear more, but we're not holding off. It's-
Well, you know,
Okay, go ahead.
okay, so all those in favor, aye again, please?
Yes,
Aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed?
No.
Nay.
Jimmy?
Nay.
Heather?
Nay.
Okay, so that we
You said nay.
supported 4-3. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one, LIDC, that we've had obviously a pretty extensive discussion on. To start off with, Muffy, you had mentioned that you're,
Well, I think you said members of the chamber. I'm a member of LIDC, I'm not on its board. You know, like a lot of townspeople, over the years, I paid $10 40 years ago and became a member
Yeah.
of LIDC.
yeah,
So is that the same as being a member of the chamber? I'm not, certainly, I've never been to a board meeting of the LIDC.
Diane, your thoughts?
I don't know. That's a good question. She is not, she nor a member of her family, I would presume, are not benefiting from anything with this transaction. So I would say basically it would be okay for her to vote. If anyone is directly benefiting from this transaction, then they shouldn't vote.
However you feel, you all know my husband
think
is
you should.
very involved with this and very favorable towards it. However, it's not gonna change our life one whit.
Yeah, how much graft are you gonna take
You know,
out?
and I think it's good to set, I mean, you know, as with George is on the chamber.
He's on the board.
Board, that's right.
And if Bob
Yeah.
Copenhaver were sitting here on the budget committee as a member of the LIDC board, which he is, that would be the same thing.
You're right, that's right, but just being a,
It's the will of this board, I don't care.
well, I think it's a good point to set
Yeah.
a rule.
Oh,
And it, I mean, in this case,
Anyway.
I mean, to me, it would almost seem like you're offering disclosure. You're disclosing that, and as far as abstaining, that seems like that's an even higher level of approval.
Spouse membership doesn't tie to this at all.
I understand that, no, it's just that I am, you know, that's it, we
Yeah,
just didn't
no,
want
that's right.
anybody saying.
But I say, if we were gonna exclude, then you think about how many other exclusions there may be. I mean, you know, I'm not sure exactly, but people who donate to the building that we're in now,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because you're a donating member to, I mean, that shouldn't, you know, prevent you from,
Okay.
you
You
know.
could disclose
Diane,
that,
do you
but-
feel okay about this?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I think that's very good discussion, because that's something I think we want to remember into the future, because, you know, it might be nice in offering not to vote, but then you might have some situation down the road where the principle could apply that you really wouldn't want to, so, okay. Alrighty, so anyway, we've had a lot of discussion on this. Rudy?
Mr. Chairman, then, you know, the way you interpret this thing over here, it's, you believe that she has no conflict of interest because her husband is part of the director of LIDC. That's you know, it's your understanding that she has no conflict of interest
Right,
between the budget and the LIDC.
right,
That's what you believe, right?
right, yeah. Yes, Rudy, because, I mean, you think about it, I mean, you know, husband and wife, and, you know, they go to vote, I mean, one can vote, you know, one way, one can vote another, I mean, it's, you know, yes, they're married, but it's not like they have the same political ideology, and you can't tie one to the other and handcuff one's actions based on somebody else's membership. That'd be
Well, I think the key is she's not gaining any monetary value from this vote. Maybe she's gaining a happier marriage, I don't know, but that's it, so I don't have a problem with it.
Heck, who knows?
That's not the point.
No,
But it's really not even gaining anything monetarily. It's people that sit on the board make policy decisions. That's where the conflict comes in. The spouses don't necessarily.
That's right.
Spouses may, in fact, you may have a board member who voted against LID, you know, against something, and they're sitting here as a budget committee member. They still, the perception is that there's a perceived conflict of interest. Which, in most of these boards, you're talking about policies, and you're not talking about money. I mean, money that you're gaining individually for
Right.
being on the board. And so, the rules that I recall where this has gone to court is it has to do with policymaking and benefiting as a board member because policies are being reflected in the decision. It's not necessarily gaining anything monetarily. If that was there, that would also be another reason not to. But so spouses are individual people, and the rules regarding spouses kind of like disappeared some years ago legally in terms of acting in, you know, instead of, so you're independent as a person. It's the policy involvement is where the conflict can come in.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Diane, you okay with all this discussion?
Yes, I am, because I don't think Muffy would ever take a vote on any of the decisions directly to the LIDC, so I'm fine with it.
Okay, so
I have no
without,
clue where the land is.
no. All right, well, so I'm gonna pose the question. Are we listed on here as
Yes.
the LIDC trend? Article 19 on the existing. LIDC transfer of town property. Okay. All those in favor of supporting what is listed in front of us as Article 19, LIDC transfer of town property, please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so the ayes, can I have the hands?
My
Diane,
hand.
you were an aye?
Yes,
Diane?
I am.
Okay, so that's 5 in favor and nays were 3. So it's supported 5 to 3.
Who were the three?
No, that's 8.
Oh, were you in that,
No.
Jim?
Oh, it's 9.
Oh, okay.
So it's 5 to 2.
So there's only 2 nays.
Oh, sorry.
5 and 2.
There goes my math again. 5-2, sorry. Okay, so that finishes the old business, if you would, from the hangover business from last meeting.
The hangover business.
Probably not the right term to use, especially after New Year's Eve.
Oh, sure.
Poor choice of
New
words.
Year's Eve.
Okay, okay, so Andrew, what do we have for new for this evening?
So we have some updates to the budget in warrant articles. Let me pass these out. Did you bring that sheet?
No wonder we're broke.
We're not broke.
All the paper you use.
Might need one more, Steve.
Thank God we live in a wooded area. Heavily wooded area.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hand these out as well.
Okay.
Because I think this shows
This is
you
another
some
one.
information that's important.
Dated one too. Okay.
I didn't bring it.
Okay.
I apologize, but I can do a quick preview.
Thank you.
Okay, Rudy.
Do you need one more over there?
There you go.
First of all,
You need one for you.
Andrew and I worked on budget numbers with numerous departments. So we presented to the selectmen last week some items that we were reducing in the proposed budget. We also had an item that we had to add to the proposed end default budget. And I will be updating a single sheet for you and emailing it out to all of you with all of the different adjustments. The total addition was $120,000 under the ambulance line. We have been getting RFPs because our current ambulance company had increased the price and broke the contract that we have. So
Where are we?
we've had to go out and try to come up with some different solutions. The other thing that we came
Where
up
is that,
with,
Karen?
that is under ambulance, which if you look in your budget that was just given
Oh,
you.
this one, okay.
Yep,
Sorry.
and we wanna go to page, I'm sorry,
You get on page 2, recreation.
well, the actual budget piece to the ambulance is somewhere between the police department and fire department. So So let me get there, and I'll give you the page number. Page number is 21
Yeah.
of 46. And you look at the ambulance service contract, under default and proposed, it's the same exact number. There was an increase here of $120,000. The RFPs we got in were running very close to the same number as what we had received from Calix.
How
So
much
we,
money, excuse me, how much money do they get out of insurance companies and personal? Any at all, quite a bit, don't they?
Well, it depends how it's run, George, and how effectively it's run.
But I think
I don't think effectiveness has anything to do with it, I think it's how it's run and where it's run.
Well, no, effective, I mean, getting it done. You know, I mean,
Yeah, but what do most insurance companies pay for?
Every policy covers ambulance so
Differently.
differently. $75, $250, a big deductible, a little deductible.
Okay.
but $800 worth
What's
of
an
coverage.
RFT though, what are you saying?
Oh, an RFP, we put out the ambulance services out to bid, and we got.
Request for proposal.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
we got 3 bids back. We also have Calix's updated numbers, and then we also looked at a fire-based EMS model. And what this is showing is this is the numbers that have been requested from Calix if we're to continue with our currently contracted agency.
So we pay them $240,000, and if they're called very little, they still get paid $240,000.
Yes.
You know, it's a
Correct.
monthly.
So if they're not called, that's obviously silly, once, they're still getting $240,000, no matter what.
That's right. Yep. And this number increases each year. So I think by the 3rd year, their new proposed contract, it's up to $295.
And last year it was 118,
Yes.
so they've added $120,000 to it.
That's
So,
right.
and they're all coming in around that cost?
Pretty
Is
close,
it-
yes.
Yeah, we look at the
What do they
numbers.
attribute it to?
The lowest, I believe, was 218, and the highest was 311 out of 4 proposals.
And we have one more proposal, and there's a commission that's gonna be looking at that. The select board has appointed a emergency medical
Right, yeah.
commission, and they're going to take a look at all the proposals,
Okay.
including fire-based EMS. And you'll see once we get a little further, we do have some warrant articles that take that into consideration.
How does Whitefield and Lancaster afford their own ambulances? We've gone into this before, I remember when Ross was
yeah,
double
I
the
mean,
price from 45 to 90,000 now,
Yeah.
double that.
They went to 135,000.
Huh?
They went to 135,000
Did they?
initially. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I sat on the board of Calix for 3 years. One of the issues with these private ambulance services is that they don't make their money necessarily on, they don't make money going to emergencies. They make their money on transports. And they all want the business from every one of the hospitals around here, and I think Littleton right now has contracted with 3 different ambulance services to do their transports. So you have somebody at Littleton Hospital, they have a cancer condition and they have to go all the way to Boston. They have to staff that ambulance for a cancer patient. And it may require a different combination of people than when you're transporting a heart attack victim or another situation. So they make their money on the transports. They don't necessarily, we pay them to do the accidents. And if, as you were saying, if there's only one accident for the whole year, they get paid. But they have to have people sitting at the fire station.
Yeah.
So you've got, it's a relatively labor-intensive situation. So they're all in rural areas in the United States. This is a big problem throughout.
Huge problem.
And the market itself is very difficult for municipalities to have to be part of. St. John's Very Selectmen, if you read the paper, they've had the same struggle. And it's not Calix's fault, it's the market that they're in, and it's the number of ambulance services that are all competing for the same transports, for lack of a better term. That's where they make their money. And they make very little of it on the accidents, except for what we pay for.
Is somebody saying the town of Whitefield actually owns their own ambulance? Is that what they are saying?
And the town of Gorham runs a very good service and has run one for years. And it has a great reputation both in terms of its revenue as well as its service. There isn't a service issue here with these companies, from what I understand and what I've experienced with Calix. It's more the thinness of that transportation market, for lack of a better term.
No,
They just don't have a lot of transport.
didn't we have a contract with Calix?
Yeah.
And they broke it, right? They
There's a
break it?
there was a provision for them to get out, which is basically a notification requirement.
There was
They
a
did that.
provision for them to get
There's an
out.
opt-out.
Yeah, opt out.
So there's no way we can go back to Calix and collect this additional funds
That's
from
right.
them.
That's right. No,
No.
So why didn't you go with the 218 instead of the 240?
the commission hasn't decided which way to go yet. So what we're doing is really going with our current contractor amount. We do have changes that'll be proposed. For example, once we get to the warrant articles, we can show you if certain warrant articles are approved, they will reduce this amount and there'll be a savings. And to answer George's question earlier, I think if I'm correct, the billing for emergency response is about $250,000 a year that Calix gets. Is that right?
So we received a couple estimates from them. From what I could tell, it was between 250 and 280 is what they anticipated on receiving from patient payments from Littleton in 2017.
That's what Calix would receive from their
So
billing.
that's what it's not what they bill patients, but it's what they claim to have collected from patients.
Why did the hospital go along with three? Did they not understand the situation they were putting us in by going to three, that they could have helped us by going to one company or even two?
I think that was done out of need. I don't know that Calix was ready to support 100% of their volume for transports.
One of the complaints all hospitals have is that a particular company may not always be able to respond
That's right.
as quickly because of the staffing issue. They have to have people sitting around, I shouldn't say sitting around.
Well, that's
On
true.
call or
They'll
available.
call.
They don't come in if they get handled the call. So I think from the hospital's perspective, and I wasn't on the board at the time they made that decision on the hospital board, but I know that they were looking to be able to have an ambulance there when they needed one. And so they've been
Makes
making a
sense
number
too.
of ambulance companies.
That's right, yeah.
That makes sense.
Whereas the hospital in St. Johnsbury, Calix has enough ambulances right in the area that I think that they have the ability to
Well,
backfill.
they're located on the grounds of the hospital as
Okay,
well.
so yeah, they can backfill very easily.
Because unfortunately, that $120,000 is now increased. Both the proposed and the default
It can't.
higher than the previous budget you gave us.
That's
Even,
correct.
even though you said you got some reductions.
Yeah.
Now we're sitting on a higher budget than we were sitting on 2 weeks ago.
And there's actually, isn't there also another element in there, when Calix started, and this was following on what Ross had provided, there was also a provision for a second ambulance, which that disappeared somewhere along the way.
Like, there were two ambulances here, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
There were two ambulances, and then their interpretation of the contract was different. Yeah,
Yeah,
what
right,
that-
different,
that second ambulance
but
was
with
actually-
Ross, I mean, and, in favor to Ross, and, we had that discussion at the time. The sentiment of some was that we should have tried to work out a deal with Ross and help them improve their situation. There was, one of their issues, not that it can happen in any small business. Obviously, they were running a funeral home and they were running an ambulance service, and sometimes in any small businesses, sometimes when you have two businesses under the same roof, allocation of overhead or whatever can be a little. But we met with them extensively, and they were certainly interested in maintaining the business, but they knew that they needed to restructure themselves based on the realities that we had at the time. How the decision was made to go to Calix, I'm not 100% sure, but I know initially Calix was going to provide. So not only has the price gone up, but for the initial $118,000 or $112,000, we were supposed to get two ambulances. After a short period of time, we only ended up with one. So if you do it on cost per ambulance, obviously it's been a lot higher than it was.
Higher than-
Even higher than what it is, and certainly way higher than what it was with Ross. But it's
So we really don't know that this number is real, though. You said there's a committee working on this, right?
Yes.
It's obviously higher than last year, no matter what. But you really don't know where we are.
At this point, if we do stay the same, stay with Calix, this is what we're looking at for a number.
And that 218 is for the first year, and then what was it after?
218 was last year's number.
The-
this year's-
calendar year
No,
2017?
2017 was
was last
118.
118.
Yeah.
118 was last year.
Yeah,
Yes.
2018 is the
240?
236
Two-
with cows.
yeah.
Is how much?
236.
236,
Yeah.
2019,
265,
and 2020?
295,
295?
correct.
And that's as far as it goes, Chad?
Correct, they basically proposed a new 3-year contract with those rates.
That they can opt out of any time they want to?
You know, I don't know that we got far enough into the contract
Right.
discussions to determine, you know, what type of termination clauses there may be.
If we chose to move forward with them, then the rest of the terms would have to be negotiated.
But if you go with the one that's at 218 or 214, something like that, now we're talking about another $26,000 savings, which actually drops us back down to where we were, less than where we were 2
One
weeks
thing
ago.
about the Calix contract is there's 2 months that in 2018 are for 2017 rates. So there's some
Okay, it doesn't back you the
adjustment in
calendar.
there.
It's an offset fiscal year
Yeah.
of some sort.
Yeah.
It's a problem, I don't care, it's been a problem.
And I remember the Ross ambulance situation, and what I remember of that, that was maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
It's sad.
Their rate, when they came to us and asked for an increase, they were looking at over 200,000 at that time. I believe they were around 240 as well. And that was, so we've been 5 or 6 years at a lower cost.
With one less ambulance.
Right.
So if you do it per ambulance, we're probably we've gotten just about the same, but,
Mm.
yeah.
So to move on a little bit
Okay,
further,
thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah, other than, I mean, this is a big, big thing though, in terms of how, you know, this is not a decision we can make half-informed, or, I mean, it's,
Correct.
it's critical. I mean, especially it's critical if we choose to go in-house. If we keep it out of house, it's, in some ways, it isn't as critical, because the number is what the number is, and that's what your exposure is. You know.
And is that what the warrant article is about, is making it in-house?
Yeah, that's
Can
it.
I-
You have to
Can
commission
I
design.
ask a question?
Yes, Diane?
So I don't truly understand the process here. The amount that for the ambulance service that we currently have is in the budget. It's in the operating budget. But if we were to change the way that we do business and go to a fire-based ambulance service, that would be presented to the voters in a warrant article, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
and it would be
So-
reducing the proposed budget.
Okay, that was the part I was trying to understand. But if it doesn't pass by the voters, then what happens? So you've reduced the proposed budget in anticipation of going with a fire-based, which has to have voter support through warrant articles. But if the voters do not pass that, what happens?
If the voters don't support the warrant articles to go with a fire-based, then we would need a contract with an outside entity.
And where would we get the funding for that? Because we've reduced the proposed budget.
No, that's why
You'd have it in this, if the warrant article doesn't pass, it doesn't subtract the money from the proposed budget.
Okay, all
That
right.
warrant article has a clause in it that if it's approved, that it will reduce the proposed budget.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So that line item in the budget would go away if the warrant article were passed, is what you're saying?
Do we have the capacities to hire and run an ambulance service? We do? Okay, okay, okay. That's all I wanted to know, Chuck.
Okay,
Sounds,
if you want to look on your warrant articles that were just sent out, and I do apologize, Diane, we don't have those to you, so you're not looking at the same. But articles 13, let's see, 13, 14, and 15.
right.
Are the ones that would affect that. And you can see there is a tax rate reduction of $208,000, $208,500, $208,000.
205,000.
Well, you had the two lines together. Right?
No, that's
The other
right.
one. Oh, I'm sorry, that's above it. I'm sorry, I'm not lining you up wrong.
The offsetting funds come from where? I'm a little confused, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If we're supposed to be doing this now, are we jumping the gun on you?
If we can talk about this now, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get it out.
Probably one of the most important
Yeah.
pieces here. We've come up with an EMS special revenue fund. We have a warrant article that has been only in the draft stage at this point. One warrant article will establish the revenue fund, revolving revenue fund, and how the surpluses can be used.
Which is number 14, right? Yeah,
So
no,
if you
which is
wanna
number
have that.
14 on the new sheet.
So that has no tax impact because it's establishing the fund itself.
With no money into it yet?
No money
Just-
into it yet.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Then we have a budget proposal. I'm hoping I have enough copies here. This was handed out to the selectmen. It's an EMS budget. It's a revenue neutral budget to start out with. It's only for a partial
There you go.
year because
Jim.
the first couple of months, we
still
still
in the
have another
contract.
ambulance service that we're using.
Does this include buying machine, payments on the ambulance and everything?
This is, there's a second warrant article on the sheet that we've handed out. If you look,
To buy the ambulance.
warrant article 15 is to buy an ambulance.
For 12 grand?
No,
Oh,
that's for
50,000.
50,000. Look on your long sheet
Oh,
here.
oh.
Lease purchase of 50 a year for 5
Right,
years.
5 years, 250,000.
We own it at the end of 5 years?
We'd own it at the end of 5 years. It would be the purchase of the ambulance plus a large portion of the startup equipment.
But not this $42,000 startup?
This, not the 42,000 one-time startup. There's,
That's an addition.
yes, this kind of like supplies and some smaller equipment that wouldn't be a large value that would be needed.
You know, one thing Chad's clarifying, this actually puts 2 ambulances in Littleton.
Why is that?
You-
One ambulance would be bought out of the current ambulance budget, a used one to start out with. For
What current ambulance budget?
the current, or the budget that we have, that 240,000 that we have.
That's why when you look at this, the reduction, it's only 205 versus
Okay.
the whole 240.
Okay,
Yeah, because you're getting something to cover while you're ordering an ambulance, because those take a long time to set up.
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long, but,
So you
Depends
have,
on the production stream.
yeah.
you have about 2 months of ambulance payments, other service ambulance payment.
Yeah.
We buy the used ambulance and hopefully be able to put some supplies from the fire department into it or from the hospital to start out with. Then we go to, once this is approved, an EMS revenue neutral budget where a portion of the fire department wages, which we started only with 50,000, which is a low estimate. And we would start up and have an EMS service that could run out of the fire department. We would have revenues, and because it has to be a revenue neutral budget, we have estimated the revenues to be low. Because it is gonna take a little bit of time to get the billing in place. Once we get that billing in place and can see a truer picture, 2019's budget could be larger, and a larger portion could be applied to offset the fire department.
And I think in that building business too, there's also a bit of a lag.
Correct.
I don't think it's 30-day.
No.
That's right.
No.
I think,
Forever.
because if I remember looking at the raw stuff, a lot of it, 120, 150,
Mm.
you know,
And we did factor into the budget someone to do the billing. So, you know, an outside company to do the billing
Yeah,
and
that's
monitor
true.
the
And somebody that
billing.
really knows that kind
The
of
hospital
billing.
might be a good place to go for that, actually.
To what?
Hospital.
Hospital actually is not a good place to go, because we
Where?
fall under a different category of Medicare, one they're not typically familiar with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But having a strong relationship with them is really important.
But there are companies that do this specifically,
Correct.
So,
So this budget would be part of that warrant article. You're voting to authorize the town to expend $140,025 to set up this budget. And there will be an offset of $140,025 plus the offset of the balance of the ambulance line and $50,000 toward the fire department budget for their wage and salary line. And that is just a rough estimate. So one person could jump in that ambulance and go out to a scene or more and not take the fire truck. Or if there was need to have the fire truck there, the ambulance could actually call and get the fire truck there. So we may not be having two vehicles going out
Which we do in
at
every.
once.
which would be wonderful for certain things.
But on an ambulance call, is it common to have just one person on the ambulance?
No.
There's not?
No, you have to have a couple,
State law requires 2 people.
two.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that, I'm sorry.
so 2 people are gonna,
Karen, thank you for all the numbers. Obviously, these two gentlemen here would be dealing with this.
That's right.
Thoughts? Anything you want to add? What do you think? I mean, it's one more thing for you to deal with.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I really truly believe it's long overdue. We've been struggling with
This for years.
contracted services for years. In this particular scenario, I believe that the voters have more control over the destiny of this operation. There is a, we'll say, an income segment which helps offset costs, which we have never had before. There's opportunities.
yes, Diane?
Could you have that person get closer to a mic,
I'm
please?
sorry.
It's the chief. Fire
It's just
chief.
Joe, he's not saying anything with that.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome, Diane. I just see futuristically, there's a lot of opportunities for us, and we get to control our destiny. Basically, looking at it from our perspective and talking to all the firefighters, right? They're ready to go tomorrow. Our firefighters are all ALS trained. We have several paramedics. They've been doing a fantastic job out there with EMS for a while, even though we had a contracted service. This contracted service had a, we'll say, a bonus, if you will, because there were other highly trained, licensed individuals helping them.
Yeah.
So we were actually subsidizing a contracted service, which I truly don't want to do anymore. I would prefer to take it on and, let us run it. And basically, it'll grow. It will.
Now, Joe, what does this do for the staffing in the fire department if we do this?
Currently, we're looking at, our biggest hurdle was Sunday coverage. Because basically, in 2014, due to the budget reductions, we lost 2 individuals. And therefore, we had a gap in Sunday coverage. It was the fire station wasn't staffed. Since then, we proposed hiring 1 full-time firefighter for Sundays. And that firefighter would in fact be somewhat of a, we'll call it a floater, if you will. And I can explain that further later on.
Can I interrupt you just a moment?
Yes.
At the last selectmen's meeting, there was a decision by the selectmen to add 1 full-time firefighter for Sunday coverage plus an additional day to cover if someone was out, to avoid some overtime and reduce some overtime. And we haven't got to that section of the budget because that's been added to the default and the proposed.
Okay, so this is in lieu of the Sunday coverage that we were already discussing that was gonna be provided by the
This
part-time
person's,
firemen?
this full-time fireman, we hired and will be working in the fire departments and will be at the station on Sundays. We still have a part-time firefighter in the budget, both default and proposed. We had 2 in the proposed budget, part-time firefighters. We've reduced that back down to 1. And we've reduced some of the overtime. I haven't had a chance to get to that section of the budget to tell you some of the adjustments that have been done.
You know,
So if we-
I'd like to see, and I agree with what Joe's saying and going to happen, I'd like to see what the cost is gonna be totally for the town, with the town having the ambulance.
So if you add this one additional person, that gives us, what would give us for a total staff of full-time firemen?
How many total?
Yes.
7.
So-
And how many of them are medically EMS trained, Joe?
7.
All of them? Okay.
When you say they're EMS trained, a couple of them are paramedics, you said?
Yes, as a matter of fact, this new hire is a paramedic. Yes, we have paramedic, we have advanced, we have 1 firefighter who is EMT basic.
Okay, just to mention here, the union situation, okay? Is there a point at which there are so many firemen that they become their own union as opposed to being in the same union with the highway department and transfer station?
I think according to the labor rules, you can have 10. Once you have 10 individuals, they can form their own union.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe if we'll say if the firefighters do get to a 10, we'll say we get to 10 hires and they decide to reaffiliate with a different union, I do believe that they are required to go 1 year without a contract during that transition. I could be mistaken, but there is a transitional period there. So there's a lot of items there.
The thing that worries me, and I discussed with Andrew and Chad, we chatted about it a little bit after the last meeting, is just knowing the nature of the contract as it exists now in terms of shift coverage and vacation time and whatever else. I mean, truthfully, it scares the hell out of me thinking that we're gonna put the ambulance service into the fire department. I'd like to think I'm wrong, and I'm certainly open to, to any additional information, but you just, follow the numbers. I mean, you have so much vacation time in the fire department now that somebody's on vacation every day because there's that many days,
That's
in
the
the
nature
year,
of the
the number
beast,
of
though,
people that
Steve.
you got.
That's-
What's that, George?
That's the nature of the beast. I mean, that's where we.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about making a bigger beast.
But
And I guess I'm just very.
That's why I'd like to have it all put together and see what it's gonna cost, what the.
Well, yeah, I mean, not just what it's gonna cost now, George, but what it could
Well,
cost in
down
the
the road.
future.
Down the road.
That's what I'm worried about. I mean, if we're gonna make a major shift, I wanna make sure that we know what it's gonna entail 2 years, 3 years, 5, 10 years from now.
are there models out there that you've seen that are budget relieving, or budget neutral, I guess is the term you're using, but ultimately budget relieving? I mean, if these people are charging $240,000 a year, they're not doing it because it's fun, they're doing it because they're making some money, I would think. And, I mean, do ambulance services make money? They must.
Well, it's, again, they're in this very tough market.
I understand that.
And there's a lot of competition there. On a totally different level, your godson delivered a baby in San Diego as a fireman. The issue here becomes one of staffing. If you've got a staff that can fight fires and can also ride an ambulance, even if we got up to 11, and then we've got a different union negotiating body to deal with, I'm not gonna call it magic, but it definitely becomes more of a staffing, flexibility, planning issue on the part of the fire chief in terms of how they're gonna staff, because they're looking at 2 things at once. They're looking at a fire and they're looking at a transport or an emergency. And with not having to worry as much about transports, because that's going to be a form of income, but it's not going to be a major form of income, because you have municipal income and you have what's coming from private parties perhaps, but a small amount of income.
Diane?
Well, it kind of goes, staffing is really a big issue, and I had some questions about the overtime as it was, our year-to-date, and I was going to wait for that piece for later, but it kind of works into this discussion, because if there is so much vacation time or so much time off, then those that aren't on vacation, it now throws them into overtime. And now we're expecting them to provide two critical services for the community, not only firefighting, but the ambulance service. So I too am like George, I want to see the bigger picture and see how the staffing would actually work. Right now, we haven't really heard about how much staffing and what some of the issues would be with the current amount of firefighters or EMS, paramedics. We don't have that information, because it is a 24/7 coverage for both.
Thank you, Diane.
Do you want me to?
Would you want
Sure.
you to
Would
Yeah.
you like
speak to
to
that?
answer it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting to your staffing issue question and your cost and leave time use. So the new hire for Sunday is going to help lower those overtime costs by basically being what I would call, and I would title, a floater. In essence, that person is assigned to 24 hours coverage on Sunday, but for the remainder of that person's hours, which is an additional 24, if there is a vacancy within the week, then that person would be assigned to that vacancy. That would be eliminating that overtime segment for that particular vacancy, which we would incur a cost savings in doing so. Just to give you an idea how that works, if I can find my number. And if that 7th firefighter position was started back in January of 2017, in 2017 there was 1,091 hours of shift coverage. And in 2017 there was also 31 weeks where shift coverage occurred and 21 weeks where we didn't have any shift coverage. That means we had 21 weeks where no one took any leave time during the year. That Sunday coverage firefighter would have absorbed 619 hours of the 1,091 shift coverage hours, or approximately 58% of the shift coverages. Now, looking at that in itself, one person, one 24-hour coverage person, is reducing that cost by 58%. I think that's extraordinary. And as time goes on, as we start, if we need to bring on other personnel, hire other personnel, other than part-time people, we need to hire more full-time people. We can certainly encourage hiring those full-time people under the same parameters as being assigned to days and also being assigned as floaters to help even reduce the occurrence of shift vacancy costs even more. So that's what we're looking at. We're very familiar with the cost. We're equally, we'll say, not concerned, but we know the costs are there. We work hard to try to lower our costs. And this particular method is, to me, is a simple method of reducing these shift vacancy costs. We haven't even talked about offsetting costs with any sort of income that this particular service would produce, or future incomes which we may incur, such as possibly paramedic, community paramedicine, in which you're post-operative and you come home and the doctor wants you checked every so many days. Basically, there's services now that will go out to your house and do that for you. All right, we are looking towards the future. We're looking at enhancing that type of quality of life for our residents. We think we could do it more effectively, more cost-effectively than any other independent service.
And that's a national model that other community emergency response agencies are moving towards, is the community paramedicine, because it helps to bring income to the.
I'm basically all for it, but I really would like to know what the heck it's gonna cost. It scares the heck out of me, but
Well, Joe, I'm just kind of looking at, it all sounds good, but I'm looking at the reality of how we have tried to curb our overtime expenses by just what I'm looking at the budget year to date right now. And we have tried to have the call company kind of help reduce overtime. But yet this year, for the call company, that line item, it's line item number 2 on, let's see, what page is it? I can't, the paper right there with the number. We $55,000 basically budgeted, and we only used 27. That was for the call company. So that was almost $28,000 that was left on the table for using the call company. But for the overtime for the captain, the lieutenants, and the 3 firefighters, we exceeded that, the $46,000 that we had budgeted, we exceeded that to $68,000. So I'm using that as kind of apprehensive about how glorious this is going to be to reduce the future overtime. So that I'm just hesitant on that because it doesn't seem to be working. The model isn't working in the for the call company and the professional firefighters. So that's where I'm coming from. So if we do need to have more information, and maybe you can provide that in the future. I'm not quite sure if there's going to be more discussion or a meeting or how this is going to be presented. Is this going to be presented at the deliberative session?
Yes.
Okay.
Diane, the numbers that you have are prior to my most recent update, just so you're aware.
Okay.
But the change was only $1,700. Plus we've also added an additional $20,000 for the proposed budget for call firefighter coverage. We in 2017
I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe we're too conservative with our numbers and how good it's going to be. Because here we had overtime and we had the call company and we under expended that number, but we over expended the other overtime. Plus now we're asking for another part-time, according for that Sunday coverage. So it's confusing to me to see how it's all going to work.
Yeah, but by way of summary, Diane, the sheet that you were looking at, we had a 2017 approved budget of $55,534. We had for the call company part-time positions, with a year-to-date expenditure of $27,154. Now, Karen, the sheet you handed out today that 27,154 has now become 28,913.
Correct.
Okay, which must be just updating the figures. The 2018 default is still 66,355,
Correct.
but the 2018 proposed has gone from 60,903 to 80,578.
Where are you looking?
Where are you looking?
Right across on line 2. If you take the budget detail, the one that was updated,
The proposed budget in the newest budget that I gave you for part-time positions, line 2, is 60,903.
Right.
and it had been 80,578.
Correct. We had included in the proposed 2 part-time officers, fire department employees, to work Sundays.
Sundays.
And in this one, we went back to the 1 person because we have 1 full-time person on for Sundays. And just to give you an overview, the estimated cost for the firefighter EMS employee for 52 weeks, including holiday pay, at the rate of $17.93 per hour, is $47,335. The estimated wages and benefits added into that makes a full year cost of $80,423. We have reduced the overtime in the default and the proposed budget for the full-time officers of $20,000, because that's an estimate of the time that this person would be working in place of paying overtime at $32 an hour. We also reduced the part-time firefighters' shift coverage, but it's expected that there would be less shift coverage that this person would be, that would be available at that point. So it's 5,000 in the part-time line we reduced, plus benefits. So we've reduced some of the benefits throughout. The estimated cost that we reduced was $33,517. So the estimated cost for this year, in 2018, for the full-time firefighter is $46,905. Because we've offset those other costs. We also have deducted, and this was not included as part of this, that second part-time person that we were gonna have in the proposed firefighter.
And the reason, Chief, that we haven't spent the allocated part-time position money this year is why we've only spent $28,000.
The availability, I
Are you
believe.
talking about the on-call shift coverage? It's availability of the person to work that particular shift on that particular day. That's primarily the reason. If we don't have, if the person, you have to understand that on-call people work primary jobs. If they're not available to work that particular day, they're not available. They can't just leave their primary employment to work a shift coverage. So if they're available, fine. We'll schedule them. They can work. If they're not available, then we need to
Just
go.
go without.
It's the overtime that
And
kicks
it did,
in.
and in 2017, we didn't have what I'll call a third employee choice. We didn't have part-time people who are scheduled. And we did not have a floater who we can put into that position as we're proposing now, as what we're doing now. All we had was either the full-time firefighters work the shift vacancy, or an available on-call person work the shift vacancy. And that's the way it is, and that's the way we're trying to change that.
And how many people do we have in our pool, if you would, who are eligible to fill the shift, basically if they're available?
5?
5?
Yeah.
That's it.
You have to understand that under the collective bargaining agreement, in order for the on-call person to be eligible to work a shift vacancy, they have to have certain certifications. Right? And we open those opportunities to on-call people to obtain those certifications. Again, it's availability. Do you have the time to go to class? You know, that's the problem that we face. A lot of these classes are nights and weekends, but still, people just don't have the time. Or the classes aren't available at an opportune time, such as we would hope that a lot of these classes would be available during the winter, but they're not. They usually start to come out in the spring, and everyone gets busy in the spring. So, you know, that's how it works. But we have on-call people who are contractors. We have on-call people who work for the state. We have a mix of all sorts of diverse mix of all sorts of on-call people. It just, you know, depends on, you know, if you're available and if you can, you know, take the class to obtain the certification.
John?
Yes, and I just wanted to follow up on one thing, talking about overtime costs in this current 2017 as opposed to moving forward in 18. Right now, we have a callback person on Sundays, full-time callback person on Sundays. My last Sunday that I covered, I had 4 callbacks. It's a minimum 3-hour call-in, so it's 12 hours, but that's all at time and a half. So it's really 18 hours of pay. So you paid me 18 hours to cover 4 calls on Sunday. So some of that is hard to kind of grasp that because it's a very new system for us in this union contract. So you're also going to see some overtime reductions as a result of not having me, who's off duty, coming back in for those 4 calls, utilizing that full-time person and that part-time person to run those calls. I think you see some of the, we're in the midst of there's about 1 billion moving pieces on this, so I don't think like any question is really good. And it's hard to see how they all lock together. But we're in the midst of kind of what I'd call a cultural revolution as well, a real cultural change and shift of mindset within our department as well. And Chief mentioned at the last budget committee meeting that we were both at about kind of a change in recruitment style. In the past, we've taken somebody that's come in the door and said, I've always wanted to be a firefighter, but I know nothing about it. Here, let me show you the way. And we invest heavily in them to train and certify them. My experience in the past has been they typically stay about 3 years and move on, either professionally to outside the department because we don't have the growth opportunities for them internally, or they just have a change in life circumstances and they're just not able to stay with us. Our change in strategy has been going out and recruiting fully certified and qualified people and bringing them into our organization with the understanding that we're going to utilize them in more of this part-time capacity as opposed to on-call kind of 24/7. If anything big comes in, I'll come in. So they're expecting to be able to work a little bit more. They can count on it a little bit more regularly. And we'll see some changes as a result of that as well.
I want to go back to a couple of questions, basic here. You've been given this full-time person for Sundays. You've already got that. That's a gimme, right?
Yes.
That's not part of this budget here we're dealing with. You got him from last year or something.
It's in the budget, yeah, it's in here now.
It's in the budget.
It's in the budget now, so
Yes.
that's a gimme. So basically, you're asking for a half a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not asking for anybody else on any warrant articles, so you're full capacity at this point with that half person. And if you want an additional person, now it's gotta go to a warrant article next year, right?
Or director's budget.
Or it could go on his budget.
Or it could go on the budget, but you can't hire anybody else until next year's budgeting. So basically, we're talking about people, well, you wouldn't be able to without a warrant article.
The town manager and the selectmen have a right to include those people into the budget.
After the budget's developed?
No.
That's what I'm
Once the
saying.
budget-
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
it.
you'd have to
He's
cut
got this
something
half
else.
person,
Yeah.
he's not gonna be able to add another one for a whole year.
Right.
That's it, so you can't hire anybody else, that's what you got. The question I got is, on this warrant article, you've got a warrant article in here for the EMS. You've got, in the budget, you've got that increase for the company. What happens if both of them pass? Now we've duplicated costs.
The warrant article for the EMS
Good question.
reduces the proposed budget.
I realize that. But what I'm saying is that passes and this one passes, this budget, you still got that other company in this budget
No,
that the town people are gonna
we wouldn't
approve.
be signing a contract with that other company. We'd be going forward with our EMS
I understand
and
that.
the 200.
But you're not gonna know that before vote day.
Right.
So that's gonna be in this budget.
That has
So
to
we're
be.
duplicating a cost, one on the warrant article and one in here. If they both pass, we've duplicated a
If
cost.
both pass, one reduces the other.
Right.
Correct.
It would be written in a way that says, you know that budget you just passed? Well, if you pass
Oh,
this
it'll be
article
written in the
passes.
warrant article.
Yeah,
Yes,
that'll
to
take
explain that
down.
that would take
Alright.
that. I have a question which has to physically, the Calix ambulance now is in your fire station? That's
Yes.
where it's garaged?
Yes,
So it's not an issue of space?
no,
We don't have to build a firehouse to put it in, huh?
no.
Or a new garage?
Yeah, their staff is there too.
There was-
Staff is
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Diane, did you have a follow-up question?
Well, kinda. This is very complex, so I'm sorry if I'm duplicating something that's already been asked. So just to recap it, so Karen, you've reduced, if we had the full-time firefighter added in, you've reduced the overtime by what, $25,000 total?
Correct. Well, it's
Right.
overtime and part-time coverage, shift
Right.
coverage.
And so that comes to 25,000. And then for the other part-time, the Sunday coverage, the original, the first draft proposed operating budget, you had the Sunday coverage of what, 21,000? Let's see,
Yeah,
21,000.
Yeah.
The 21,000.
Would that also be eliminated if we had the full-time firefighter?
One
There
part.
would still be one part-time firefighter. In the proposed budget, we had two. The
So-
original
Okay.
proposed budget, we had two.
So this proposed budget, it would be reduced by 23,000, somewhere between there, for that part-time line item.
Can she hear you?
Plus the 25,000 for the overtime?
That's correct.
Okay, all right,
That's rare.
thank you, that was it.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, echoing what George said and others have said, I mean, obviously it sounds like a lot of good ideas, but extrapolating it and making sure how it's gonna come out the way we anticipate it. And I guess my concern still would be to make sure that we're not getting ourselves into an overtime situation that the thing can, balloon on us beyond what we expect. I mean, Chief, for right now, so we're gonna have two people in the station as we always have, or have had for quite a while.
We have to, we're in the process of putting one of our part-time people through an orientation. And we're in the process of bringing the new hire on board and putting them through an orientation before we assign them to Sundays.
Okay, but Monday through Friday, there's, aside from yourself being there, you're gonna have two people,
Two people,
okay? And if an ambulance call comes in, those two people are gonna get in the ambulance and go.
That's
Under
correct.
this new system.
Yep.
And the firehouse then will have no other coverage while they're out on the ambulance.
Firehouse will have no one in-house.
Besides you, I mean,
Well, if I'm there, yeah, obviously, yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than doing other things during the day, but
Is
yes.
that, is that good? I mean, is that,
Well,
to me, it's not. If the two firemen out on an ambulance call and we get a major fire or a fire, and I agree with not, I mean, to see the ambulance and the fire truck go to an accident someplace bugs me, down Main Street or wherever. But are two people in the fire department enough people to handle the ambulance and the fire department?
Yes, right now, for now, that's how we have to start, that's what we have. For now, we have two people on duty and part-time. We're gonna attempt to supplement our staffing with additional on-call and additional
Income.
part-time people.
Well, and you also don't really know what your income, have you got an estimated income?
My estimates are very, very low. I believe I'm half of what a full year would be.
Yeah.
And I don't dare to go too high
right.
I agree
because
with you, Karen.
you know, I'm also feeling like I feel a commitment there to make sure the numbers are right. I know it's gonna take a little time for the whole billing process to happen, so I feel good about having a little bit lower estimate on the income. Some of the RFPs that we got in, some of the numbers are above 200,000.
An
That's a
income.
full year income, and that's transports and medical billing.
I think we should do it, but it's just still scares the.
It's a lot of work.
Scares the
It's a lot of work to
daylights out of me,
figure.
and I don't think 2 firemen are enough to be in the firehouse all the time with both the ambulance and the, I mean, you guys experienced it, I'm not, but that just seems kind of ludicrous to just have two guys on duty to run the ambulance.
Could I
and-
pursue that, Joe, what George said about the 2 EMTs go off to the accident, and you're there, and there's a fire takes place. What happens?
We tone out our department, all the off-duty personnel as we normally would, as well as all the mutual aid personnel companies that will be responding to that particular fire. It would happen today, right now, the same situation that you're talking about, the 2 firefighters who are on duty right now, right? They're committed now, as we're speaking, to a cardiac arrest. And a fire occurs on Main Street, and they cannot leave the cardiac arrest, right?
Because they're there along with the ambulance.
That's
and there.
correct. They're
Okay.
working that patient, all 4 hands are working this patient, and they cannot leave.
2 of them go with the current ambulance?
Yep.
Let me,
They can be at a car accident on the highway, extricating a patient, right, where a fire comes in and they cannot leave.
So I mean, in that case, so the ambulance is there with 2 people.
Yep.
The fire.
And then fireman is there with
okay,
2 people.
and
the
the
other
fire-
thing
People?
we're not talking about, where in the heck is this $200,000 estimated income from the,
Yeah, but George,
Well, you
let the chief explain
Yeah.
his situation though, just so we, okay, so we're on the highway,
It's
there's
the
an
same-
accident, the ambulance is there, no, thank you, sir, and the fire truck is there with 2 people, okay, then
And then
something else happens.
Something else happens. Depending on what that something else is, right, we tone for our personnel to come in, right, as well as mutual aid to assist.
Depending on the level of what.
Exactly. Yep.
but-
I mean, there's times when we're out, we're in other areas of the community, when the fire department's busy, in which we'll tone for station coverage. We would have anywhere, a minimum of 2 to upward of maybe 4 or 5 on-call people come in to staff the station at that time. So there is a redundancy in place already. It's,
Except in this case, as George is getting at, I think, so we have that accident on the highway, the 2 firemen leave for that accident in an ambulance.
we're still leaving a couple $100,000 on the table that we've got income-wise, we don't know what the heck we're gonna do with it. Are we gonna hire additional firemen with it? Or what are we gonna do with it? You're gonna, I mean, it's income, it should go toward the medical, the ambulance, and the fire department some way. But it's just out there loose as a goose right now.
Hey, George, I thought we were trying to nail down the people situation here.
Well, that's what I'm looking at, that $200,000 is people
Well, that's right,
situation.
but let the chief explain, so I mean, so, we're under our new system, there's an accident on the highway, the 2 firemen leave in the ambulance, go to that accident.
yep.
A fire ensues. Under the current system, it's quite possible that both the ambulance and the fire truck would have gone initially. But now in this situation, we've got 2 firemen in an ambulance going there. Fire ensues, they need more help. That comes by toning in, that's the next
That's
step,
what he said, yeah.
As we do now,
as we do now.
as we have done for years.
Yeah, other than, right now, we have the capacity to have 4 people on scene immediately. We'll be down to having 2 people on scene immediately.
Yeah.
So, I have a question. We're anticipating income from transport. And explain to me what a transport actually is. Is that a transport to a hospital other than Littleton, or is it to
Right.
Littleton, or what is it?
So, sure.
Yeah, Chad, and the difference between transport and transfer, right?
So it's kind of semantics, because the billing system does not recognize anything different other than loading a patient into the ambulance at a location and driving them to a medical facility such as an emergency department. We talk about transfers. Transfers are typically thought of as interfacility, so from LRH to another hospital, typically Dartmouth or CMC, usually a larger center, although they can be the nursing homes. And the transport is typically considered more like a 911 call for a person in distress that needs to be brought to, most often, the closest, most appropriate facility for us would be Littleton. So there's some semantics there, but billing-wise, healthcare finance-wise, they don't recognize any of those distinctions. Calls are billed off of a base rate plus mileage. The base rate is determined by the nature of the call and the level of services provided. So there is emergency calls and there are non-emergency calls. When you have that cancer patient that needs to go to Dartmouth, they don't have to leave immediately. They can leave in the next hour, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a non-emergency call. So that's one distinction. The other distinction is whether advanced life support services were requested and or provided. And I say that because it is possible for somebody to call 911 and say, I'm having a heart attack, and that's reasonable for us to send advanced life support personnel to, only to arrive there to find out they're having something much less severe. And we do not provide advanced level services. We're allowed to bill at that level because of what they requested or what they reported their problem would be. The third component is the mileage. How far are you moving the person? So that's how the difference between transport and transfer and how the billing works at a more functional level.
But the hospital's still gonna have their
what
own.
Go ahead, Diane.
What happens though then if we do transfer to Dartmouth and that's not a short ride, and so then you have to have the coverage in the fire station while those fire or the EMS service is being provided.
Correct. So we don't have plans initially to do interfacility transfers. It's a few more hoops to jump through, and we kind of need to take this step by step.
But it's big money.
It can be big money, and I do have a lot of experience with it being big money, but we have to get our feet under us. You know, we have to have an ambulance. We have to, get our personnel used to completing the necessary documentation before you put out that type of expense. Because while it is big money, there is expense with it as well.
But looking forward to that transfer, though, that's going to be two different people than the two people that are
I
working
would
that
never
day at the fire
advocate
station.
sending our only two people on shift
That's
down
right.
the
And it might be
Dartmouth.
those two guys on their off day.
Well, so that's where you're
No,
doing
no, no.
down
Correct.
now.
But it's not gonna be those two
Part-time
di-
personnel, call personnel.
Yeah.
There's a number of different mechanisms about how to staff it. So we're talking about initially just providing what we would call 911 services.
Is that practical though, financially, because the ambulance services make so darn much money off the transfers?
Transfers, yeah.
And is that, economically, is it smart, starting off that basic, even though, because there is a lot of money out there for the transfers?
We need some time to start a little bit more basic, and I don't, maybe it's months. I don't think it's years, but we do need some time. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. The revenue account that is being proposed allows us access to the revenue. And that's something, so if we want to get into transfers, it's going to cost this amount.
Now that comes out. Okay,
So that's how you utilize some of that fund, so we can kind of grow it in a revenue neutral, taxpayer neutral type level. As we're ready to take that next step, we don't have to wait a year and a half for a new budget or something like that.
I'm glad you said that because I couldn't figure out
Okay,
where that
Muffy
was
and
at.
Heather, you both
Here's
have.
just a quick
I think
question.
that's great too. I'm just trying to set the parameters of what type of service, how extensive it's going to be. And I understand how you have to start out small, but you have to kind of define the parameters to us. You understand it so much easier than we do. We are asking these questions just because we have to ask these questions. and the people that watch Channel 2 will understand it a lot more because of these questions. So you're really confining and defining the services at the very beginning, just till you get your feet wet and you understand the full parameters of it.
Correct.
Correct.
We need to build a high-performance billing system to go along with everything, and this just takes a little bit of time and experience. But like I said, there is no less than 1 million moving pieces to this whole thing, so I really don't feel like any question is too.
The only thing I think is somebody's gonna call up with a $600 call, and you're gonna say, holy cow, I can't let that go.
Okay, Muffy?
Quick question, now that time has passed and you've ironed out some of the issues. We own an ambulance, okay, and we've got staff that can do it.
Two.
We have the old ambulance, that's my next question, that you're gonna buy for just a short while. Will that ambulance ultimately stick around as the spare ambulance?
Yeah, we would need 2 ambulances to ensure.
Okay, so you could do transfers, so that if you're transferring to CMC, let's say, or whatever,
Yeah.
there's an ambulance here
Correct.
still ready to take me to
Staffed,
the Littleton
equipped,
Hospital.
ready to rock
Okay,
and roll, yeah.
so the temporary ambulance becomes the spare ambulance in this whole package?
Correct, and you need it for maintenance as well, so that way you don't.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure, we're really talking about an ambulance and a half, I mean, sort of.
Correct,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Because if you have today, like when they were.
One follow-up question.
Sorry.
If I
Go ahead, Diane.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Diane.
I'm sorry.
No.
The liability though, so now we have a liability, so how does that change our insurance?
Well, at this point, I'm trying to get exact figures, but I have an estimate only of 12,000 at this time. So, until I get firmer numbers, that is the estimate that I've been given, and that's what I've used as part of this budget.
That seems awfully low.
So Primex is a really great partner in this. I mean, if the insurance rates are so low that even historically in managing the EMS system, municipal EMS systems as I have, we don't even really talk about them because they're so much lower than all the other costs. It will really discourage you to find out how little we pay for insurance through Primex as opposed to what, the individual pays.
Right.
I wanted to mention that Chad is our captain, and we were very lucky to get him. He comes from the town of Gorham. He worked there previously and has worked intensively with ambulance, EMS, fire station.
How does he do with hypothermia?
So
I'm struggling right now.
We are freezing, let me tell you. Is there no heat in this building?
Well, you're very kind, Karen, but it's been a great opportunity for me to be here as well. So.
We're happy you're here.
But it also, that's an important piece of the puzzle, is to have someone who's actually been immersed in that sort of setup
And you've done
before.
this, yeah.
So that's,
So the last 5.5 years prior to coming here, I was the EMS director for the town of Gorham. So we worked with, I was technically a firefighter, but managed the EMS system there.
Good.
And really learned a tremendous amount. It was a great opportunity, great experience. And so I understand, I've worked with a lot of budget committees talking about healthcare finance. It's extremely complex. And I know it can be a real struggle, so that's why I just want to say I do understand if you guys have questions.
It's not a struggle, it's spooky.
Well, so you always struggle with, personally, I always struggle with how much do I want to tell a board. You know what I mean? Just like how much you want to tell your parents, how much you want to tell, and anything like that. What it ultimately does is it does require a degree of trust, and I'll be very open about our successes and very open about our failures as well. I've always gone with Karen's model. I've always promised an amount or an option and over-delivered it, because I don't want to sit here and talk about how much money we're going to make. It's going to be great. We're going to make millions, and then not be able to deliver on it because of any number of factors beyond my control. So,
And Andrew, I guess this is a question to you. It sounds like, and people I know you have to go into much more detail on this before we do anything, but it sounds like the trend is in our small rural areas that these ambulance companies just don't want to be here.
It's the cost really to be here.
I mean, it's not worth it to them.
The cost of readiness really, and,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're seeing with why they've had to increase their
The
contract.
huge
Right.
increases.
And we've looked at those numbers to see, what costs they have. And as the proposals have come back, they're in the market for what it takes for an entity that isn't already based here to provide that kind of a service. So,
that's-
yeah. There are a lot of communities that are
Before,
doing that.
I was on the budget committee when we went to it before. and it
Okay.
was-
Could I ask one more question? Why do we have 4 people in an accident now and we'll only have 2? Why do we need 4 people now?
It actually depends on the nature of the accident. Obviously, minor accidents,
You'd only have the 2.
you only have the 2. We,
Joe,
major
90% of the
accident,
time
we
you
have
see
to-
the
well,
ambulance
we
go
would-
through, and you see a fire truck go through with it though.
Yeah, and most of the time you'll see, what you don't see is you don't see the fire truck getting canceled or a fire truck just turning around and going back to the station.
No, we always see the fire truck.
And or the fire truck, I'm gonna use the term lightly, not being committed, working that particular incident. They're there to perform a task, they're there to perform, a hazard assessment. Sometimes we'll get to a call and we think it's something that's relatively minor and end up being something, major. And then the opposite's also true. We're going to a call we think is major and it's really relatively minor. We don't really know until we get there. They're just,
Well, I think we've
it's just the
learned
way,
as much
the way
as
we
we're gonna learn
operate.
in this right
And we
now.
send 4 people now because 2 of our people are single role people. They are in the ambulance and they're committed to only the ambulance. The firefighters actually could shift amongst, if we've talked about this, if Calix's spare ambulance was there and we had a second medical call, our plan was just to hijack it and deal with the consequences of that because it has all the equipment and everything to take care of somebody moving. I can't transport them in a fire engine. So you see more people on a call now because we are more resource specific. I'm standing in this role, I'm only certified for this role, that person's only certified for that role, and so on and so forth. Moving forward with the cross-training, you're gonna see much more dual role type response, so.
Thank you.
All right, well, obviously, some very good discussion, but
Well-
I think if nothing else, I mean, we all feel like we need to get to a comfort level, we need to do some projections, obviously, which Karen is always very good at, conservative projections, and we need to get our arms around this, if you would, so that we have some comfort level.
So we will go over this at another meeting with all the projections.
Oh, yeah, I'm
And
sure.
there's a commission that's established that
Right.
they, with people on there who focus on this type of thing.
Who know what they're
And
doing.
so, they're gonna be out there too, helping educate the public on whichever, method they recommend to move forward, whether it's fire-based.
And when will
or,
they,
So we've scheduled our first meeting, and when you say people that know what they're doing, we were asked to kind of take a diverse group of people. I think it's a really good group of people, and we will go through the process together. It's a commission, I can't tell you they'll have a decision, here, then, where. It's a process they'll have to determine, much like your budget committee process. And obviously, there's kind of a deadline in sight.
Yeah.
How the sausage is made in the interim, I don't know exactly. But,
We have a contingency plan, but.
they'll review all the options in front of us and help just to make a recommendation to the select board and town manager about the way to path forward. So,
Okay. Well, Chief, thank you very much. Chad,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
you're
And
welcome.
Thank you.
Now, the budget that's been given you, we actually, last week, told the selectmen that we had come up with 96,000 in cuts in total.
So
And
this
you'll
is the one
begin-
that you- this is
This
one
is
you
the one
had-
that you've got.
Yeah.
And I did go over the revenues. Diane had sent an email, and I hadn't got a chance to update the revenue page. So this has been all updated, and you'll look on the default and the proposed, all of
What page
the,
was it?
we're on page 246. The revenues have been all updated. Your year-to-date's been updated. We still have some funds coming in that are gonna be recorded as receivables that we expect to get in the early part of January or February. That's something that's done every year.
Okay.
In the MS 434 is done during tax rate setting, so I might have proposed revenues as one number, but the actual number that's used to set the tax rate is updated, and it's a picture that's looked at and estimated to be where we think we're gonna be at year end. So the numbers that I put into the MS 434 are reviewed by DRA, and they may change a couple numbers, and they have in the past. So I have as close to the revenues as I expect to get, and then I have my year-to-date revenues.
And that's where your accounts receivable are going, is the year-to-date?
No, the
No.
year-to-date is what we've
Actual.
received as of right now. You'll notice that there's a gray line on payments in lieu of taxes. There's some that we should be getting in that are for 2017.
Okay.
Once I see copies of the bills, I'll record those as receivables.
Okay, okay.
And then the other one that I know I'll be getting more monies in on is down lower on line 36, cable franchise. We'll get another half-year payment on that. And I usually get a letter about the 10th of January to say how much that is. Once I get that, I plug that number in here because it will be a receivable. We also have the betterment assessment that's going to be processed out. It's a one-time thing that people are paying for their improvements on their road. So in 2018, I have a default numbers for revenue, and they're exactly the same as 2018 proposed as far as the general fund goes. The other funds like Parks and Recreation, Opera House, Transfer Station, those are all based on the expenditures, and they're considered revenue neutral.
Right.
So they match the budget. So those numbers might be a little bit different.
Karen, so since I don't have this in front of me, can you tell me what the 2017, the updated year-to-date is?
The total, including outside budgets, which are Parks and Recreation, Opera House, Transfer Station, sewer users, special detail, and parking meters, we've collected $3,499,739.
And that's over what you had projected, the last on the 12/1?
Yes.
That was 2 million, so now you're at 3,499,739.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The default revenues I'm projecting is $3,359,946. The 2018 proposed revenues is $3,346,513. And the difference is there's a difference on the Opera House, and there's a difference on the sewer users, and that is all budget based. So those revenues have to offset the expenditures. If you continue on to the next page of the budget, page 3, there's a summary here. And year-to-date expenditures, and this is as of the 28th, and I know I'll have more coming in. Year-to-date on the operating expenses, $5,779,347. We had a budget of $6,009,158. And if my projections will probably have between 50 and 100,000 left that will probably fall to fund balance.
That will underspend,
That I'm estimating
50 to 100.
50 to 100. I'm saying closer to 50.
I knew you would.
If we look at this new budget, of course, all these numbers are in here. I've included a line that says the difference between 2018 and 2000 proposed and 2018 default. And under total operating expenditures, the difference is 118,771. If you continue to the next page, if you include all of the outside board funds and the enterprise funds and the debt service, the difference between 2018 proposed and 2018 default is 135,207. That is a 1.5% difference between the proposed and the default.
And what is, because I don't have that in front of me, so what is the difference between the proposed 2018 over the 2017 then?
If you use the number that is adjusted by the warrant articles that include the addition of the full-time highway employee, the part-time highway employee, loans and leases, and the two CBAs, the contracts, the difference is 315,373. That's 3.56%.
Oh, I see that, okay.
If
Okay,
you
and
use,
then we go back and with the revenues again. So the 2018 proposed revenue, if I'm correct, Karen, is $3,346,000. So that's less than what you had originally, right?
the 2017 proposed revenues were,
Go ahead, sorry.
the 2017 proposed revenues were $3,256,506.
Thank you.
What was used at tax rate setting was $3,381,696. So the revenues did increase from when I proposed them back in January 2017 to when we set the tax rate. So a few highlights of what was changed from the last budget you got. There's no changes in executive offices. There's no changes in elections and registration and vitals. We did reduce the tax collecting person. We had in the proposed 40 hours a week. We've reduced that back down to 37 and a half. So to reduce that amount. Under financial administration, in the default and the proposed, we took out the GASB 45 requirement that's every other year. I paid for it last week, so it got into 2017, so we'll have to add this back in the 2019 budget. Under legal expenses, in the proposed, we had a $20,000 increase from what was in the default. We've adjusted that down to $90,000. There's no changes in personnel administration. In planning and zoning, we had the full-time position as 40 hours a week. We've reduced that to 37 and a half hours a week. Under, let's see, town insurance, that's on page 15. We did get a notice in, our insurance is gonna stay the same for 2018. I had in there a proposed estimated increase of 7%. I thought, and I really expected it to come in higher, but we ended up coming in the same.
So we're gonna be at
So
the
this-
110,894?
110,894 for both the default and the proposed. Under other general government, which is on that same page, line 9, I still have the 6,000 in here for the airport. I believe this is a decision that the selectmen will need to make. on whether they're going to increase this up or down, or keep it the same.
Okay, will we be taking a vote on that though?
I think you should make a recommendation of what you decide.
Yeah.
You did last
Because
year.
it'll be on the list, won't it, which we were gonna go over next.
It won't be a separate warrant article because
It's part of the budget, right?
it's part of the
Part of
budget.
the budget.
It's there's a contract between
Yes.
Littleton and the airport.
Right.
So,
Well, I think we should put it on the agenda to,
to
Talk about
discuss,
it.
yeah, take a vote.
In the police department, if you look at page, I'm sorry, 19, I believe. Let me just make sure on my other checklist here. We've removed the JMAR that was in the budget. It's page 20, I'm sorry, page 20. Under line 41, under that category, there was a JMAR and there was firearms replacement and repair. And we also had dual band portable radios. We've took out the firearms and the JMAR, and we've reduced the portable band radios down to 4,000 from 9,000. This is part of trying to see where we're at the end of the year and what we might be able to do. They were small amounts, but can we do it this year? Yes, let's get it done. So there was an effort there to get that done. Of course, I've already talked about the ambulance. In the fire department, we've added a new employee in the default and the proposed, full-time. We had to make some adjustments on the holiday. That was all part of that CBA that goes along with the new employee. We've reduced, in the proposed, the 2-person back down to 1 for station manning on Sunday. We've also adjusted down $5,000 under part-time firefighter shift coverage. And then in the overtime, we've reduced the overtime under shift coverage down to $8,266, which reduces that one number down 20,000. We've reduced the number under the proposed as well to that 8,266. So that reduces the total overtime quite a bit. As part of this, we have a health insurance plan that had to be changed. Still is less than last year, because we had to account for the new full-time officer in there. We included the other wage-related benefits, which include life insurance, disability insurance, Medicare, retirement. Then, in the fire department, we also reduced the vehicle repairs and system failures.
What page is that on?
That would be under,
Line number.
I'm trying to find it here, sorry. Line number, on page 25, you'll see a little indent that says line 34 and line 35. Actually, line 35 is the one that we reduced. We had originally like 26,000 in there, and it's reduced down to 19,225. So continuing on, there's no changes under public administration. Well, yes, there is. We took out the part-time admin assistant 15 hours a week that he was asking for in the proposed budget. Under Public Works, there's no changes with any of the staff.
I thought that on the public works, he mentioned the other day that that's probably the most important thing to him, was to have that part-time assistant.
The decision was made that possibly using one of the other full-time people to do some of the work. Under Public Works, they're on page 31, under sand and gravel, there's a reduction of $10,000 in there. there was an increase of 20, and we dropped it down 10,000. Under the proposed budget in pavement maintenance roads, the professional line striping has been removed, so that dropped that one by $10,000. Continuing to transfer station, page 35. The change that took place is on actually page 36. We adjusted the property liability insurance, line 20, to be the same as last year's. No increase. Under library, page 38, same thing. Property liability insurance is reduced and is the same as last year. On page 39, under Parks and Rec, in the proposed, we've reduced the amount of months that this person will be starting to work for the town to 11 months versus 12 months. We've also made a change in the health insurance because we had someone go from a family to a two-person plan.
Why did that change to 11 months?
Because that person probably won't be on board until February 1st. The building maintenance,
Was there somebody in there before
yes, there was,
at 48.5?
yes.
And the new person coming in is gonna be 57.2?
It's actually 62.5 per year, and that's a high estimate. It can be anywhere from 48.5 to 62.5, and this was a decision that was jointly made with the Parks and Rec Commission and the town manager to get the person that was working there was underpaid based on the comparisons that I've gotten from other towns.
We've also done a little bit of changes to the responsibilities in the job description too, so.
The requirements of this person has a lot more added to it. The other change that was in the default, in the proposed, is under building maintenance in Parks and Rec, page 40. We've dropped the number that was in the proposed by 5,000.
What line are you on, excuse me?
Under 20,
20,
building maintenance.
Thank you, yes.
Debt service has not changed. The Opera House, the only line that's changed there is the property liability insurance. Again, reducing that to match this year's. No change in special detail. No change in parking meters. Under sewer users, we have an adjustment in the contractual increase. I received a letter saying the contractual increase was only going to be 1.5, and this is in the default and proposed, instead of the 2% that I estimated. We also have a reduction in the proposed, line 16, the monitoring, testing, and reporting. The reduction of 20,000 there. So those are some of the changes that went along in this budget. In total, added up additional change that we had done today. The adjustments reduced the budget 121,000, and we had to add in the full-time firefighter, which added it actually added 80,000 back in, because we took those other reductions.
So 40,
No, it was 46,905. I counted the 21 here.
Karen,
Yes,
sorry, going back to the Parks and Rec on that permanent position, going from 48.5 to 62.5, and you said that someone had called other towns to see what the going rate is. Is that for someone, do they actually compare for someone that's just beginning, or are we comparing to someone that already has 10 years of experience in this community?
well, I've looked at the past surveys that I've done, And we were always anywhere between 10 and 20,000 below for that position. So it's something that's been ongoing, and it never had been increased. Plus, we're adding more duties to this individual.
I understand, that you're adding more duties, but I think that's a little high for someone that's just beginning.
6.
That's just my thought, so I don't know if anyone else thinks that, but I think, yes, I think 48 may be too low, but I think the new one may be just a tad bit too high.
Okay, Diane, we are 5 minutes past the witching hour or more, so unfortunately, we're gonna have to call quits to this for tonight, because there's somebody else coming in after us, but just so our next meeting is gonna be
January 11th?
January 11th,
Well,
which is,
don't the selectmen need our approval by the 10th?
They're meeting January 11th.
They're meeting January, I thought they needed our approval by the 10th.
They should, yes.
We need to be done our process by the 10th.
I can't be here the 10th, the 9th, we have another meeting on the 9th.
9th being next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Andrews.
Okay.
Diane's still there.
Diane, you're gonna hang in there for an answer?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
He said, we're just trying to determine when our next meeting is gonna be, that maybe it's gonna be next Tuesday the 9th instead of Thursday the 11th.
That's fine with me.
Okay,
9th, okay, 9th?
9th?
I'll
Ralph,
have to
Jimmy?
leave early, but that's
What?
all right.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I'm gonna have to leave early, because I have another meeting at 5:30.
Okay, but you could be here part of it. Should we start at 3:30?
What, could we start at 3:30, yeah?
You see,
It's
I
3:30.
I have something that I could move, so yeah, we can do that.
Jimmy, 3:30, yes, no?
That's.
As close as you can.
That's too early for me. I can see what I can do, but I work until 3:30, and then I leave, and then I'm here by 4:15.
Well, Tammy has to leave at 5:30, so we'll just have to leave at 4.
See what I
Yep.
can do.
That works for me.
Okay, we'll bring up all the important stuff first,
That's it.
before you go.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we all set, folks, so the next, we'll schedule it here.
Yes, we eat next time.
Is it gonna be 4 or 4 o'clock?
That was
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock here
Next
on
Tuesday.
Tuesday the 11th.
Heather, bring your blanket
No,
in
the
next
9th.
time, okay?
9th, geez, sorry. Sorry. 9th, Tuesday the 9th.